Wow, did you see what happened with that couple there? Man, they were just talking back and forth over each other, never really giving each other a chance to hear. Intensity's rising, finger pointing. I mean, this was clearly the fight response of the flight-fight syndrome in full-blown activity. And all it's doing is increasing the risk of harm and really not getting at problem solution. So the most important thing for a couple like this is approach number one, the quick and easy approach. Hey, take a time out, decompress, give yourself about 30 minutes to bring down the emotional arousal, and then come back at it using the other tools, okay? So we did look at the first approach, which is the quick and easy approach, and that's about tools. We looked at the second approach, which is the routine approach, and that's really about forming healthy habits that help you work out the stress in your life. And now I want to look at the third approach, and the third approach I call the deep dive approach. Now I'm sitting out here in a football stadium. There's no game going on right now, so it's a little quiet. But last night I can literally hear the noise from my home just a few blocks away. This place was packed with people on a Friday night football game. You know, parents come here to watch their sons play, and they generally have smiling faces and they're cheering their kids on and the team. And it's just a really fun environment. However, if you look around the crowd, you can also see some people who don't have smiling faces. They're kind of more intense, and they're yelling at their kids or yelling at the coach. You know, they're just getting really, really amped up. And you wonder, wow, what's the deal here, you know? About 3 weeks ago, I was watching my 13-year-old grandson play football, and about 4 or 5 feet away from me was a father who was there, and he was just riding his son. I mean, his son had to be no more than 12 years old and thin as a pencil, but he was out there really trying, playing football. But the dad was just, you know, yelling at him and criticizing him for every move he made. And at one point, the son was running back to the huddle, turned and looked at his dad, and just faced off with him and just clenched his fist like this, gave a real angry look on his face and some primal scream as if to say, will you back off, because your approach is not working. And you know what? It wasn't. Now, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, Dad, why are you so angry? You know, and that's a great question. In fact, the first time that question was asked is way back in recorded history, where we find the first anger situation between humans. In fact, it's the first incident of domestic violence. It happened between two brothers, Cain and Abel. Now, this is a religious story, and if you're not a religious person, I don't want you to tune out right now, because really the focus of what I'm talking about is about anger and angry behavior. But Cain and Abel were two guys who had different kinds of work. Cain worked the fields and agriculture, and Abel, he worked with livestock. And there came a day where they were going to worship God and bring their offerings. And the content of their offerings said a lot about the intent of their heart. Well, let me explain. Abel brought the best of his livestock as a first fruit offering to God. Cain, it says he brought some of his produce, indicating that he didn't give his very best. So the content indicated the intent. Now, the intent in Abel's heart was pure, it was worshipful, it was generous, it was thankful. Cain's attitude was really more of selfishness and self-centeredness and entitlement. And so when the offerings were presented, God looked with favor on Abel's, but he looked on disfavor with Cain, because he could see the intent of the heart, which made Cain really angry at his brother Abel, because Abel got props, he didn't get props, right? And so what happens here, God, you know, gets Cain aside and says, hey, why are you angry? You know, why are you so downcast here? And then he really kind of gave him a warning. Deal with this question and what's underneath your anger, otherwise it's going to get a hold of you and it could be a game changer. In fact, that's what it was. Cain did not unpack that question. Rather, he took his brother out to a field, he deceived him, and then he murdered him. And then from that point on, it was a game changer for him the rest of his life. He became a wanderer on the earth. Well, let's put that story aside and let's focus on what's so important. And what's so important for Cain, as it was for the man who was yelling at his son nearby me, is that why question. Why are you so angry? Well, you might say, well, it was the situation that made me angry. Well, that's, I'm sure, part of it. But when anger is so intense, especially the intensity is far higher than the situation calls for, it really means that we have to stop and look at what's underneath the anger. And so doing the deep dive, that third approach, is answering that why question and looking underneath and trying to understand what our anger really is all about and what's underneath there. Now, if Cain would have done that, he would have unpacked things like self-centeredness, selfishness, entitlement, jealousy toward his brother, this sense of superiority. Now again, as I said, these are unpleasant things, but if these things exist in our heart and we don't deal with them, they're not going to bode well for healthy relationships. We're just going to have problems in life. And so if some of your anger has to do with those types of things, it's really important that you see that and work on those things and work on changing them. Otherwise, this anger pattern will continue to play out in your life rather than being reflective and changing traits and characteristics about yourself. You're going to be projecting out onto your anger onto other people, which is unfair. Another thing you might discover is a little bit different than the Cain, like the Cain awareness, I guess I'd call it. It would really be having to do with deeper wounds. Deep wounds form early on in childhood. And it can happen under a variety of reasons. Now, no family is perfect, and I'm not here to pick on parents or anything like that. I'm a parent, so I'm sure my kids have their wounds too. We all have them, and they come out of things like feeling, rejection, neglect, abandonment, or in situations where there's a lot of anger in the home, or alcoholism, or abuse. And sometimes it could just be when a parent's, their way of motivating you or parenting you is to criticize you or to make you feel like you have to be perfect. Well, these types of environments do create wounds in the heart of a person growing up. And with those wounds become beliefs form, like, in order to be loved, I have to be perfect. Or in order to be approved by others, I gotta think about their needs and not my own. Or you can't get too close to people because in the end they'll hurt you. Or it might be, hurt first before you get hurt. And now these are not conscious thoughts that we think. They're really unconscious thoughts that are buried in that region of the mind. That when we're in situations that are threatening or perceived threatening, they're activated, they elevate, and they come out in the form of emotion and behavior. So they're subtle, they're tricky, they're not always in our awareness. But when we do the deep dive, that's where they come into an awareness. So I would say one of the ways you can break pattern, and I would say the most powerful, the one that's going to have the most lasting effect, is when you do the deep dive. Now, how do you do that? There are several ways you can go about it. It's really an individual thing, but let me just share quickly just a few. You can do it by journaling, asking the why question after an incident. What are my triggers? Identifying my emotional triggers. Those can be done by journaling. They can be done by going for walks by yourself. They can also be done by talking to a close friend, someone who you consider a confidant, who's not going to judge you, who's going to listen to you, who knows you well enough to be able to help you. Or you can talk to a person like myself, an executive coach, life coach, counselor. I cover a lot of different umbrellas in my career, but I spend a fair amount of it helping people answer the why question and digging deep at those childhood wounds or those character traits that get in the way. You can talk with a pastor, a minister, a rabbi. But the important thing is that you do something about it. Don't be like Cain and just blow the question off. Do the deep dive. Now, if you want help with that, feel free to contact me. You can contact me through my website. I have on my website a way to contact me. Feel free to do that. Reach out to somebody. Begin that process. It will benefit you so much, and it will be your way to break your pattern. Now, 3 things again. Approach number 1 is the quick and easy approach. That's incorporating those tools. Approach number 2 is the routine approach, right? That's forming healthy habits, stress reducing activities. And then approach 3 is that deep dive approach. Now, if you have learned how to do one or all 3 of these, and you have some comments that would encourage or inspire, or a brief story to tell how you unpack some things, you don't have to uncover everything, but if you feel you have something salient to share, feel free to leave us a comment down in the comment box afterwards. I would love to see your responses. They always inspire me, and I know they help others as well. Well, I hope this really helped you. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time.